Hey, ladies, we want you to mark your calendar for October 5th through the 12th, 2025, because we're taking you on an epic pilgrimage to Crete.
That's right. We're doing a beautiful retreat called Awakening the Goddess, where we are going to nurture ourselves from the inside out. You're going to be learning all kinds of sacred sexual practices from both the Taoist and the Tantric perspective. We'll be doing yoga every day. We'll be going and visiting sacred sites and really harnessing the energy of the primordial goddess, meaning the original divine feminine energy that is so alive on this island. I was just there last year and it was a game changer for me. And I was like, Leah, we got to put together the retreat that I want to go to. So this is it.
Yeah, there's something very special about women coming together and healing and awakening each other's Shakti to really resolve some of the blocks, some of the hurt, some of the traumas from the past, to shed that dead weight so that you can become more alive. You can become more magnetic, cultivating trust, cultivating vulnerability, cultivating presence, coming into a new state of consciousness in the arms of a group of really amazing women, sisters, and friends you're going to have for a lifetime, including Willow and I. So join us on the plane. Let's get this party started. You can sign up at sexreimagine.com and let's go to Greece, baby. Welcome to the show. I'm Leah Piper with Dr. Willow Brown. We are your hosts for the Sex Reimagine podcast, and we're about to dig right in. But before we do, we want to remind you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And while you're listening, as thoughts show up and feelings show up, go ahead and leave us comments. We absolutely love that and appreciate them.
Absolutely. And today we have an incredible guest, Max Carey, filmmaker and world traveler with a passion for exploring diverse cultures and subcultures. He recently completed a documentary called Touch Kink, which is a provocative documentary delving into kink and self-expression. And it was so cool to chat with him about the inside scoop of what he learned, how his whole life changed from doing this documentary.
So please tune in, turn on, and fall in love with Max.
Welcome to the Sex Reimagine podcast, where sex is shame-free and pleasure-forward. Let's get into the show.
All right. Welcome, Max, to the Sex Reimagine podcast.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you here. I mean, you've completed this amazing documentary on kink. I'm so excited to hear more about it and how you even came to it.
Oh my goodness. How many hours do we have? I know we're in the 32nd generation, so I'll make it quick. Yeah. I met a dominatrix one day. I probably had met many before, but she wasn't what I expected. She sat down and answered my stupid questions. I'm a pretty regular guy, and I had this crazy idea as to what she would be. And she wasn't any of those things. She was kind. She took her time with me and she went through it. I'm like, wow, there's really a lot to learn from this person. And that beginning of the trip.
Okay. Wow. And so did you work on this project with her specifically, or did that just kind of lead you down the path?
No, I did actually. In fact, I was working on a bunch of other things, and she was so passionate about it. I mean, the world of kink and BDSM and sexuality in general is about trust, and like, she really opened a lot of doors for me. She recommended people and they got to know me, and then one person led to two people led to four. And so her reference, her this person isn't out to, because there've been a lot of projects about how crazy people are doing all this weird shit. And when she realized I wasn't asking those kind of questions, she had literally worked on a documentary a little earlier that was like how kink ruined your life. Yeah, those kind of questions are definitely like, they're not aiming for any kind of balance. And my questions were different. My questions were genuine. They were like, I really need to understand this a little bit better. Why? What is it? Like, why are people liking this? How are they different? And so her reference and her vouching for me kind of really got the ball rolling.
Now, was this January Seraph? Is that how I say her name? Okay.
And I watched the documentary. I really enjoyed it. It was really interesting to watch all of these creative people express themselves and to see the relationships that they had with their submissives. In particular, I really enjoyed the dominatrix from Texas, I believe, and little group of submissives. It was really interesting to see that dynamic and how worshipful and grateful her submissives were to her. It was really quite lovely to see. What were some of the things in the making of this film that surprised you?
I mean, I always had this suspicion that everybody thought so differently. I mean, I knew some people are gay and some people are straight and some people are bi, but it surprised me just how big that human spectrum is. You know, Briggs Myers is like, I know that's pop psychology, but there's 16. The reality is there's infinite.
Yeah.
It's sort of this
Yes.
unit thing of like things people get turned on by and things people connect with. And I guess maybe it shouldn't be so surprising, I suppose, because we fall in love with different kinds of people and sometimes our friends are surprised or this or that. But just the sheer magnificence of what humans love and turns them on and empowers them. And that diversity isn't something to be afraid of at all. That diversity is something to be celebrated. And, you know, give me 2 seconds to be political, but I'm worried that, like, we don't want to compact this down to this binary old kind of thing. And nor could we, because these creative minds and these beautiful people and all these crazy ways, they will invent the future.
Mhm.
And they have. Name a major invention. It was pretty much invented by a kinky person.
Good to
Well,
know.
seriously, like Leonardo da
Really?
Vinci, Leonardo. This is my next film.
Oh,
and
sounds fascinating
So-
film.
Leonardo da Vinci arrested for crimes against nature. Okay.
Like what?
Yeah, what
did
does
he
that
do?
mean?
Just probably pie.
Uh-huh.
But at that point, that was whatever it was.
Yeah.
You know, he was just a little bit more open-minded than the average Florentine, or not Florentine, because he was Venetian,
Right.
to be more accurate. Alan Turing, the inventor of the computer, just, good old-fashioned, gay, bi, or whatever. And, chemically castrated in spite of, like, ending World War II probably 5 years faster than anything else.
Yeah.
I mean,
What about Albert
I mean,
Einstein?
well,
Do we know about
I was
his?
Kink?
Right? Actually, there has been letters.
Oh.
Einstein wrote letters to his wife about basically, do not bother me. Here are the roles that you shall do. I think he was just really I think he was sort of like passionately asexual.
Yeah.
And he was very like, that was his thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he recognized, if he was living, if gay was more normal, he would have been gay. It wasn't about that for him. He just wasn't into sex. He was into his numbers. He was a fetishist for numbers.
Ah.
And I honestly
Got turned
believe
on
for
by that.
Mozart, Beethoven, there's a few, Tchaikovsky,
Uh,
killed himself. Now they found out he was killed because he was gay in a time where Russia wasn't really down with that, and, they gave him this way out. So, you think about some of the most brilliant minds. I don't understand why we're trying to like push this back down to everyone shall be this or that. It's not, even if you're the most right-wing, fucking conservative, crazy person, you should encourage this
right.
I think
because
so
this
too.
is what we have.
Yeah.
Create
This is the beauty
mind.
of being human, is the rainbow of humans on the planet.
Well, also, I
U.S.
think
military should be paying for the LGBTQ plus kind of things to get those ideas coming.
I think also it's I can't imagine not being touched by the undeniability of someone's pleasure when they are lit up and turned on and their cistern opens. I don't know what's more beautiful than that. And when you feel that light shine out of somebody, it's contagious, it's beatific. My system opens when I am in the presence of that. So I want to see that kind of light in the world. And I think where the edges come into play and things get crutchy kind of comes down to consent. I was listening to a book called The Heart of Dominance lately, and one of the things that's interesting that he was talking about is, the first time he put a collar on his partner with a leash and walked her around in a public place, they drove 4 hours away to not run into anybody that they may know. And he considered, is it consensual for me to do this in front of other people who haven't given me their consent to wanting to see me walk my girlfriend around on a leash? Like, you have to play these edges of what's okay to expose people to. At what point do you need someone's consent to expose them to something that lights you up? And I thought, I had never heard of those distinctions before, that kind of consideration, that kind of, I guess, wanting to protect the triggers of others. You can only do that so much before you're infringing on your own freedom. So,
It's such a balance.
it's a way bigger, concept for me to tackle on this show, but I was struck with that
I think
idea.
it boils down to, I hope I'm not interrupting you.
Go ahead.
No, please.
I think it boils down to your community.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it like, okay, you're showing cleavage. There are people there. I'm blown away by people who have issues with breastfeeding. They're like,
Right.
you're feeding a baby and somebody can feel offended by that. This
Right.
is everyday kind of thing. It's like, so I'm in charge of your mind and I'm just trying to take care of my child.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but this seems a bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
There is this like community. Personally, the more I did this film and the more I've explored this world, I don't like people that aren't kinky.
Yeah.
That aren't kink informed.
Why? Tell us why.
With those, I like to go to big events where everybody's like pretty kink informed. So if they see you, with somebody on a leash or do whatever, they're like, okay, cool, might not be my kink, your kink, whatever.
There's
And
a
moving
deeper
on.
sense of acceptance. Yeah.
But in the end, it's just community. So what you're doing the universe's work here by helping expand people's minds. It shouldn't be a big deal. Your average person working for a corporation may not have a literal chain around their neck, but that tie is pretty symbolic. Their suits, they're owned by some corporation. And that's perfectly acceptable. Why? What's the big deal of having someone who I really want to wear the collar? It's the same stuff. In the end, it's not about what's wrong or right. It's what that culture, that little bubble that you play in is worth. In some cultures, the Germans still to this day, lunch break, German business guy goes to the park, takes off all his clothes, gets completely naked, hangs out, suns himself, eats his lunch, completely butt naked because it feels good for him, puts his clothes back on, goes back to the bank. We would think that's weird, but it's normal there,
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
culture. It's just what you grow up with and what you're used to. There is no wrong or right other than violating people's consent. That's the only, for me, that's the only thing's wrong.
Yeah.
Is if you violate someone's consent, that's wrong. We are going to make mistakes. We're stupid people. When I was a teenager, I probably did a lot of stupid shit. I would like to think I would never do that again, and I know better and would ask the questions, and I have, but we are going to make mistakes as humans, but the best we can do is always read the room, try and prepare the situation, and best thing is to always be in the right room.
For you at that point in your evolution, right? Because it's like we're always evolving at different levels and different paces, and so yeah, finding your place in the world that matches the frequency of where you're at.
Yeah. And making a choice within yourself, if you can be so inspired by what we're talking about today, those of you who are listening, is being the kind of person who inspires an open-minded, inclusive,
non-judgmental
spirit. Yeah, in the rooms that you walk into, so that more people have an ability and a chance to feel safe in your presence. I certainly endeavor to be those kinds.
That's one of the top things I hear in the Tantra community, where people are stepping into it for the first time and they're like, wow, I feel so like I can just be myself and not be judged, and just be really authentically me, which is so that's what we need more of in the world. So I'm curious, Max, You've created other documentaries, and I'm just so curious, like when you were creating this one, how did it affect you differently or more deeply? Was there anything that you really learned or took away that's transformed you forever?
Let's take a quick break.
Hey guys, what would it be like if you could last 10 times longer when you're having sex?
We are going to teach you how to gain massive confidence as a lover, all without performance anxiety, gimmicks, or prescription.
This course is perfect for you if you've ever been mortified by a sexual encounter that ended way too early.
Or if you've ever avoided intimacy out of fear that you won't last as long as your lover desires. Or maybe you long to give your partner multiple orgasms but can't last long enough to make that a reality.
Well, good news, we've got your back. And it's in our course, Last 10 Times Longer. Go to sexreimagined.com/last the number 10 X longer.
And for all of our favorite listeners out there, we are giving you a discount, 20% off, y'all. Just put in podcast 20, all caps, podcast 20, to get your 20% off of this phenomenal course that you're going to want to review more than once.
We cannot wait to see you inside this course. Plus, don't forget, we always got tons of bonuses. See you there.
Yes, for sure. And it's probably the same thing that I hope audiences get from the documentary. I'm pretty boring, straight, relatively dominant man who was kind of surprised by all this and developed a huge new respect for the women and the people that thought differently than me. And if I'm honest, I thought that was a bit weird. Even though I've had the opportunity and thought, that seems a bit okay. But now I know these people and I know they're happy in that. So the biggest change, I think, for me was making this real, not just, this wasn't theoretical anymore. It's like going to a new country and really getting to know the food and getting to know the people and really, wow, this is very different than back home. So I'm forever changed by my mind opening more to the possibilities of all of it. And honestly, also, it's like the evolution you'll go through as a human being too. You're like, you find yourself realize how much of who I am is what I was told to be, and how much of who I am is really what I want to be or that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And then certain things like the kinky community in general resonated more with me. Like, oh my God, I can talk about anything. I can like just be open. I can say, excuse me, but this may not be your thing, but blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wow, so refreshing to have those kind of conversations without going, oh, can I say that? Am I allowed to talk about this? Are they going to think I'm weird There was a time when I was a young man where I thought, oh my God, if I want a finger up my bum, I must be gay.
Right.
And I'm like, well, if it was a guy you wanted that or whatever, sure, nothing wrong with that. But if it's a hot girl you want, you're probably not. But, like you think that there are these crazy ideas that I must be gay.
Yeah.
As,
that are limited.
Oh my goodness, only that but who do you want having do that? Oh, I want a hot girl do it or a woman do it. Probably not. For me, I like, and I'm working with a few AI companies right now, and I'm working with helping people understand the world differently, because the problem right now, and even LGBTQ and Kink has this, they want to put themselves in these boxes. I'm a spanko, I'm a femdom, I'm a rope person, I'm a gay, I'm straight. Humans don't fit into boxes. We are organic in everything, and it's flowing. Sometimes you're more feminine, whatever that means to you. You have to define what that means. Sometimes you're more masculine, so you're more dominant. Again, you have to define what that means to you. But we're organic, we're analog. And we have to stop I get labels are useful. Like, okay, you're kinky, I'm kinky, great. We can have a conversation. But they only get you to the right city. The right neighborhood, it's much more nuanced. And I love the nuance. I love the biggest thing I learned, you asked, when I hear someone describe themselves, it only gets me to the city. I sort of like, I'm going to define you that way. In the past, I did define them. Oh, you said you're this, I define you as that. Now I'm like, hey, you got me to the city. I still don't think, let's talk about life in that city.
Right. How important is the definitions? How important is how you identify yourself versus simply being yourself? And one of the things that I'm struck by the kink space is just how brave people are. I've noticed the bravery in myself that dial has moved up since I became more comfortable having conversations and exploring those corners inside my own psyche that light up around taboo topics and, have things that kind of create a spark that I never thought it would be okay to admit. That's been really, really thrilling, and it is vulnerable and it's brave. And I think that's a big contribution to what Kinksters provide the world. What other contributions do you think the kink community is making?
Well, building on what you just said, actually, when we're a kids, we play, and somehow we get serious. But what is play really but anything scientific? It's like, hey, can I do this with you? Can you do this with me? And let's see how that goes. This play idea is some kinksters call it play. And I think it's adult play, sure. But this is how we learn about the world. We play with ideas. We're not machines, again, we play with ideas. Oh, you want to be dom, you want to be sub, you want to do this, you want to do that. I want to be, let's play with that idea and see how it goes. Oh, I didn't really for me, the reason I have the big O, people ask me why touch kink has a big O. And partly is playing on touch and O, but the biggest thing for me is the circle. Because if you talk to somebody, you negotiate with somebody, you get that consent, you do that thing, and then you check in with them afterwards, you complete a circle.
Mm-hmm.
And doesn't have to be a good situation. Oh, I didn't really like that at all. Please never do that again. But it's a circle. It's experimental. It's wonderful play. And as adults, if we keep that circle going, we're like, okay, we tried X, Y, and Z, and it worked or didn't work, but I'm caring about you as a human being. I have compassion for you. I'm trying to do this right. I think it's healthy. It's healthy experimental stuff. And that's the big thing for kink for me. Whereas if you don't, conversely, that's it. It's not about you slap someone on the bottom. If they ask for, they want that, and it's really part of their thing, and you negotiate. It's great. You walk up to somebody on the street and do it, not so good. It's not about the action.
Depends on where you're walking, what street, what city.
Exactly. That's really a big thing. It's like, but I could never, yeah, you shouldn't do that with strangers. And you should have a few conversations and organize consent, but there's no thou shalt never do anything. There's just do it with ethics, do it with compassion, do it with caring. This is another human being in front of you. And that's the other thing I'm left with.
You make a good point. I think one of the things that people who aren't familiar with BDSM or kink, what they may not know is that there's a structure and a form to how people engage in this play. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's sort of a standard
in the follow-up.
Yes, that's right.
And prerequisite forms to fill out.
Yes,
Leah and I actually did a couple episodes on that for those of you who want to check that out.
You're both right. You're both right.
Yeah.
You're both.
Yeah. And so there's, you start a scene or a play with negotiations. And then you engage, you find out what worked, you might find out what didn't work, you see what's needed, you have some aftercare, and then you discuss, what your takeaways were. And that's a pretty standard operation. And then people sort of, they do that a number of times with the same person. They start to build a relationship, and then that may turn into a scene that lasts even longer. And I think all of that's really fascinating. So for those of you who don't know, there's a certain kind of form that allows for more safety in the exploration and in the expansion of some of these edges, which is worth informing others about.
If I could interject, this is actually probably the thing. I've been to 30, 40 film festivals now. My film on the big screen and, hundreds of people watching, and they always there's a Q&A afterwards. And, invariably there, people putting up their hands and asking a few questions. And one of the ones that always gets to me is like, oh, it seemed a bit complicated. And my answer is always this, maybe a little, but you don't understand the rewards. You don't understand, okay, maybe you're not quite as manly as you want to be because you're asking her if she likes it. Maybe you're not, whatever, but it pays off. It pays off in ways you have no idea, because maybe it's a little awkward in the beginning, but you form a connection and a trust that takes you to a place that you can't be. So yeah, I get it. It takes a little bit of extra time to go, I would like to do this with you. I want to like, ooh, and she might just go, or he, or whatever, and whatever. But that extra bit of time about explicitly saying what you're into and what you want, and that extra little bit of time to find out, well, actually, I'm up to everything except for I'd rather you just do this, not that. Cool, I'm happy with that, but not this. No problem. It makes this incredibly, so it might seem a bit complicated for some people, but I assure you, learning the circle of just talking, being open-minded to people, letting them really have that chance, then getting that clear consent and doing it, it rewards you in ways you could not imagine. You'll have sex, you'll have relationships, you'll have experiences beyond what you would have had just by doing the whole, I'm going to make a bunch of assumptions about you and see how it goes.
It's like that old adage, good fences make good neighbors. And when we know where our boundaries are, we have more room to explore the edges of those boundaries. When we know that we can trust the other to hold those boundaries for us and with us, then we're able to push up against those edges and push up against those boundaries within, which takes us deeper into that place inside of ourselves where we get to go a little bit further than we think we are available to or able to. And I think that is one of the most beautiful things of any sexual exploration, where there's a conversation that happens beforehand, where there's, here's what I'm available for, here's what I'm not available for. And it's like, and then when we get right up against those boundaries and those edges and we push them just a little bit within that session that we set up with boundaries, it's sexy, it's hot. It's like, ooh, we're breaking some rules, we're pushing the boundaries a little bit, doing things that we said, ooh, we may not be able to do. So it can create a lot more eros and a lot more arousal within your system, because your brain is expanding what it said it was able to expand into.
Well, you're also leaning into part of the transgressive elements that are really hot, and we tend to, I think, in the vanilla world, deny that those things are really hot, that boundary pushing has a lot of sexual arousal oftentimes connected to it. And when you do it in a place that you can trust, which is why I think safe words are also such a great thing, is being able to play with that and having communication that isn't filled with words and sentences, to be able to play with those edges. The other thing I think, just that I believe this could contribute to the vanilla world, and I'm not using the word vanilla as if that's a bad thing. I think vanilla is delicious. I think we should all enjoy vanilla and add whatever toppings we want to it to make it even more interesting. But here's where I think a part of that, the thing that the kink world could really bring value to the vanilla world, is by having those conversations, people get to explore their desires. Mm-hmm. And desires are oftentimes, for many of us, hard to name, access, give words to, be vulnerable with. It's scary. And for a lot of people, I think a lot of women in particular, we haven't been given permission to own those desires, express those desires, ask for those desires to be fulfilled, pursue those desires.
Even know what they are.
And so to be able to play with scenes, or to have sort of this idea of play in, even if you would never explore kink, or fetishes, or, impact play, or BDSM, or any of those elements, to be able to have a conversation with your lover where you feel safe and you are provided with prompts that allow you to discover that, is such a huge gift. I think everyone would be having better sex and having more successful and fulfilling relationships
more intimacy
as a result of that.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, I get myself in trouble sometimes in the kink community because I actually wonder if kink is a thing, because everybody likes real life.
Yeah.
I mean, I get we
Yeah, like
call
what
it
is
that.
it really? Yeah.
Yeah.
They label themselves. I'm gay. I'm straight. I'm kink. I'm this. I'm that. But again, I don't think we're anything. I think we just like what we like.
I love that
see
perspective.
I do
those-
too.
Yes.
It boils
Yes to
down to
that.
three things. Three things. We like what we like at that moment.
Mhm.
We see ourselves how we see ourselves at that moment.
Mhm.
And we want what we want at that moment.
Mhm.
That's all. Maybe it's
Yeah.
and I'm submissive and I want humiliation. Maybe it's I'm dominant and want your whatever and I'm want an orgasm. I mean, but it's fucking labeling. Excuse me, I don't know if I'm allowed to say
Of
that.
course.
Yeah,
it's
say whatever you want.
Tired of like this kind of it's a little bit sad, and I get the world we live in. It's a little bit more political, and everybody wants to fall in politics. But sometimes we're losing ourselves on that
Mhm.
because
Couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
Esther Perel had I'm sure you read Mating in Captivity, but one of the best lines she had was something along the lines that humans will often be aroused by the same thing that they protest against during the day.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Totally.
All for not, equal rights for women. I support feminism. I support. Now, girl, you get down
Yeah.
on your whatever. First
Go
day,
get on your
like
knees.
whatever. Exactly.
You dirty
like
little slut.
yeah.
Yes.
I mean, the thing that people have the hardest problem with, and this is another message to my film, another message I would love people to realize: don't feel bad about the fact you're two people. At least you're probably more than that. But you can be a good mother, a good father, a PTA member, the one that, has the best record for picking their kid up at school. And you could be something completely, you'd be the dominatrix that likes to, that's not a contradiction. Some people think it is. They're only going to remember you from the most salacious bit. Oh my goodness.
Right.
Did you find out PTA leader is a dominatrix? Who cares?
Yeah.
Is she a good PTA, whatever? But right now we want the salacious bit. And we don't recognize as humans, we have a public thing. I always say to people like, in Canada and say, when I go to someone's home, I take off my shoes. Other places, you don't take off your shoes. In certain parts of the world, after a good meal, you're supposed to burp out loud. I'm a polite human being. If I'm in a place where at the meal, I'm supposed to burp. There's places you're actually supposed to be fart out loud. A couple countries where you're literally after a good meal.
Which countries are those? I'm going.
Like, all right.
That's
I'm
my
not-
kink.
It's eating. But I respect the culture. If I'm in a public situation, I'm supposed to bring an orange or bring an orange. I'm supposed to bring a bottle of wine or bring a bottle of wine. I'm supposed to,
Yeah.
that's your public you. If we're friends and we're more intimate, then we can do that part. But it's okay to be two people. And in fact, I think it's better. And
Well,
it's
More than
we should be-
two. I think you said that at the beginning, right? There's
Yeah.
there's so many facets to every single person, and
public and private. It's
public and private. I love that. Yeah.
public and private. Private can be, and public can be, both can kind of be infinite, but
Yeah.
there's a public, polite person that takes their shoes off and brings you a bottle of wine and says, thank you for inviting me to dinner. And there's private. So do you like spanking me? Like we're having,
Do
you don't?
Yeah.
As friends, you get to know the private person, but you don't, just because their private desires might be salacious or unusual, you don't want to define them by that, That's my point.
I love it. I love that point. This is a little not on your point, but maybe it is. Why did you decide to name the documentary Touch Kink?
Touch was the play on the spectrum. Like I kept seeing everything as like this organic wave, and we like pleasure, but for better or for worse, whether we want to admit it or not, pain gives pleasure a bigger sense. The sadnesses give happiness a bigger sense. Like if you would, I've met a lot of rich people that had like everything given to them and they're got everything you could possibly imagine in life. They're depressed. Why? Because they never suffered at all. They never had that baseline of like having to struggle for
They
anything.
never became resilient and strong inside of themselves.
Well, I don't know. You know what? I don't even put it that. I think it's even more simple. Everything is a wave. There's a bottom of your wave. The bottom of the wave is, it's a boring day and I have everything. Top of the wave is like I'm meeting the prince now and doing whatever. This is a normal day that for normal people is the bottom of your line. we need both sides. You know, I always try to speak to friends that get depressed, or I promise, I know it sucks. I know you don't think you're going to get past this. I know you're feeling like, oh my God, there's only one solace I can give you, is that this bottom is going to be the line that there'll be a pleasure coming. There'll be something beautiful coming in your life that will be so amazing that this gave it the bottom. It's just how we work. And it's biochemical. It's literally, I mean, this is not me. This is science. Yeah. Your brain gets used to certain biochemical levels. And when this is the worst thing that happens to you, that's the worst thing that happens to you. This is and that's your little thing. Whereas if it's bigger and more dynamic, or you explore bigger and whatever, it's bigger. And it's just the way humans work. And, you know, I actually think personally that we are living in an amazing world. Even the worst thing, a lot of the worst things has happened. Well, okay, you lost your job, you don't have any money, you got to eat rice for a little while. My God, it's not really the end of the world. It'd be the end of the world if you're like getting bombed or something horrible like that. But a lot of things people think are like, oh my God, my boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever left me. I'm never, you know. Comparatively speaking, I just think that it's biochemical, and we go up and down. So to make it more simple, it's okay to feel what we feel, and even the bad stuff leads to good stuff, and we should want that wave that goes up and down, because that's how we are.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, bypassing the emotions that come with those down waves is actually creates a resistance inside of your system and your life that, you know, attracts those down waves to you even more. So I feel like what you're talking about is really like riding the waves, surfing these waves of life and the emotions that come with them, and how that kind of it grows you into a more whole version of yourself, or a more evolved version of yourself. And it's never ending. We get to ride these waves till the day we die.
We should, and to recognize them as something that will pass.
Right. Exactly.
To recognize this isn't the first time, and won't be the last.
Right.
And you actually, in some way, there's a reward to it. I know it's hard, like in that moment, I feel that sometimes myself. I'm a little bit this way myself sometimes.
What?
Everybody, like up and down. But to recognize and go, okay, this is, you know, not feeling great right now, but I know it will change.
Yeah, and then there's something sweet about going into the feeling of it when you know behind that feeling that it's not going to last, that it's going to shift and change, and you'll get through it.
Well, if I can go back to making a bridge with the whole identity part, is I think sometimes we over-identify with our suffering, or we over-identify with our bliss. And it's, I think, more useful actually to just hold everything gently and go, and this too will come again, and this too will come again, and this too will come again. The sadness and the grief will come again. The joy and the bliss will come again. And can we actually challenge ourselves to learn to be a lover of reality, regardless of the state that we're in? Is to go, you know, here in my pain and in my suffering is something to be present to. There's something in here for me. How can I not rush this experience, but actually learn to love the reality of this experience? Much harder to do than when you have the opportunity to love the reality when you're at a peak state and things are feeling really great and really connected and you don't feel separate. I think from a non-dualistic perspective, the opportunity is to not feel the separation when you're actually in the bottom of the wave, when you're feeling a sense of loneliness, isolation, or suffering, to again hold it gently and to realize that we're over-identifying in that moment. And we are becoming separate instead of realizing that we're actually not separate.
I like that.
There's a spiritual opportunity in those moments to go, I'm believing a story of separateness and isolation.
And where's your kink in that?
Expand my perspective.
Like,
right.
Where's the
How
joy? Yeah. How are you getting off on that? Especially if it's a chronic thing that you do. Like, you must be enjoying it on some level. Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, there are people that have kinks that I do think are a little self-destructive, where they're reliving particularly bad moments of their life. I think I completely agree with what you're saying, and I think that's like the the gold standard of how people should think about it. The reality is we think the way we think. You asked me earlier about what I learned from kink. And the biggest thing I learned is that I didn't know anything. That everything that I thought about the world, that I thought this is how men behave, this is how women behave, this is how the world works, and I was pretty sure of it, was all bullshit.
That's a big thing to learn.
It was earth shattering, actually. Really confident I had the world dialed.
Right.
Right. But in the end, it's your personality too. So like what you said is the gold standard. We should all go to that. But, depending on where we grew up and how we grew up and
our conditioning comes into fuck all that great philosophy up.
Exactly.
We need to kink dition to uncondition.
Yeah. All bets are off, and it's kind of an illusion to think we've got much control.
Yeah.
But here's another interesting, just to throw in another angle into all of this, is just taking a look at our reaching for dopamine. It's like getting that hit of that feel good, and really starting to take a look at how much we are burning ourselves out on dopamine. And that actually disrupts our resilience. It disrupts our overall satisfaction, that we actually need to allow ourselves to pursue hard things and to delay instant gratification, because then the payoff of when we do get to have a high, it has it's a much more rewarding experience. There's a lot of things coming out right now about the chase of these dopamine hits and reaching for more and more and more, instead of sort of being with the discipline. And in our culture now, everything is at our fingertips and things are more and more convenient than ever before. I mean, I leave the house barely ever anymore. Like pre-COVID, I was out and about all the time. Now I have to actually remind myself, no, go on.
Get out of the house.
Go get the groceries. Don't get them delivered. So there's an interesting thing around comfort that plays into all of this, and our desire to want to just stay comfortable. And I think this is where sort of the interesting part, I think, back to kink and playing with these edges of sensation and these psychological corners that may feel a little more taboo and dark and transgressive, can be very interesting, is because much of it is uncomfortable. And it's in that discomfort that there's an interesting payoff. There's an interesting reward. You're doing something that may be uncomfortable and hard for you. And some of that is in the devotional pursuit of someone else's pleasure. As I play with an uncomfortable expression of my inner dom, like, that doesn't feel supernatural to me right now. But I'm pushing myself into those edges because the reward of witnessing someone's submission to me is so beatific that I want to get better at that archetype. Even though I'm much more natural submissive than I am a dom, I want to play in these playgrounds. How has your journey been with your own level of discomfort and maybe difficult conversations or vulnerable conversations? Have you been present to that as you've sort of explored your own depths?
I suppose. If I'm thinking about it, it's like, I think I'm very slow at like evolving. So it kind of like, I just asked a lot of questions, got a little information, because when I did change my idea, it didn't really seem like that big of an evolution.
Okay.
It's I've been very blessed in my life. I spent 18 years traveling the world, living in 137 different countries, and I from a very early.
You've lived in 137
countries.
How
Yeah,
old are you? How did you even have time
old
to
enough.
live in that?
Old enough.
18 years.
But
Wow, cool.
the biggest takeaway from that refers back to kink is that different people have different ideas of what's important. And it's not just like you might grow up in one culture and thou shalt be like this and thou shalt be like that. But there's a lot of places where it ain't that way. They have completely different ideas. And when you start getting exposed to that, you realize that there is no fundamental truth. So I think being exposed to that variety, I just became really, really open-minded to everything. And I'm, it just became sort of natural, getting that chance to explore. And again, why I love the kink community is that You meet someone, you connect with somebody that wants to connect with you, and you perform some sort of key experiment.
Yeah.
Let's try this. I never tried this, but with you, I'd like to maybe do some X if you want to do some Y, and let's see how that goes. And
Yeah, the possibilities are really limitless. It's incredible
they really are.
to hear people saying, "Oh, we have a boring sex life." I'm like, wow, there's so many things to play with and try and do.
Well, I think that like really highlights that there's also there's an artistry to all of this.
Yeah.
There's a high art and a sense of creativity that I think going outside of the box is really, really valuable, and I think that when we see where art is suppressed, we have a culture that thrives less. When we see art that
exactly.
is explored,
Absolutely.
we have ideas and conversations, and we get exposed to things that can change our minds and open our minds and open our hearts. And yeah, that's the world I want to live
Yeah,
in.
I mean,
In
sexual.
a broader sense, this is why we need to support the arts. This is why we need to support diversity. Even the most conservative people in the world should
Yeah.
see the beauty in that, because by supporting the arts, by supporting diversity, you're supporting ideas. And you may not have known that you like X, Y, and Z, never even heard about it. And someday one of the most amazing stories, and I wish I had this in my film, I met a couple. They were late 30s, and I met them at a kink party and had a talk to them. Turns out they were, high school sweethearts. Met at 16, got married at 18, divorced at 21. He was the quarterback. She was the cheerleader. All American kind of classic story. And, fast forward all these years, he could never bring himself to say he wanted to be submissive, that he wanted to sort of be submissive to her. And more amazingly, she could never bring herself to say she wanted to be dominant to him. So they got divorced.
No, wow.
All these years later at a kink party, realizing they were perfect for each other.
Oh my
They
God.
just had the bravery
That is an amazing story.
to be who they
Ding.
are, but neither of them
Yeah.
at that moment had the words or felt comfortable enough. Hey, I'm the quarterback, I'm the cheerleader. There's these ideas of
Right.
what that is,
Wow.
and they didn't make it. But then they, met each other many years later, and they're happier now than they could ever be.
Oh, it's
And
amazing.
it was really just there wasn't the concepts. Hey, when I was a kid, polyamory didn't exist. I never
Right.
heard. We cheated.
Right.
Right.
Gender fluid or fluidity of like sexual.
That
No,
wasn't a
you're
thing.
straight. You're even bi. Okay, bi is a bit weird.
Uh-huh.
You can be gay. That's okay. I get gay. I get straight. But everything had to be so like we didn't have the words.
That's
so
a beautiful
in the end,
story.
art and what you're doing and letting people just know these things exist. Give them kind of like there's this thing that. As I say, my big thing is just stop thinking about labeling yourself. Think about things in terms of more fluid and more like spectrums. Maybe you're 99% the biggest, baddest guy in the world, or this or that, but nothing is 100%. Lindsay did this in the 50s.
Mhm.
There's like 5% that are gay or 5% that are straight. Everybody else is pretty much in the middle, if they're
Right.
honest.
Right.
But somehow we kind of didn't really follow that lesson, but this is how humans are. So like just having the words and having the permission to talk about these things and even knowing they exist. He this guy that he didn't know what it was.
Right.
He didn't
know how to
the
talk
word
about it.
Christian
Yeah.
her. He just wanted to kiss her feet.
Right.
He wanted her to tell him what to do.
Uh-huh.
He didn't probably have the word submission
Right.
Right.
or slave or what. He just I just really like it when she's kind of a bit bossy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were there
And
any other things that you left out of the documentary for any that you like wish you could have kept in, or you left them out because it was a little too edgy or anything juicy you could tell us?
lots too
Good
many.
question.
There's some footage of I met Fakir Musafar, who is the grandfather of body modification, and he had this amazing thing about energy and how the world is, and he's happy, like he's passed now. I think I had the last interview with him, which is why I will let it into the world at some point.
Okay.
But just how he was very much about that. For him, it wasn't about male, female, this, that. It was all
I love that.
he knew that from the 50s.
Yeah.
You know, that it was just, he knew what he was. He didn't, now they probably call him queer or this or that. But it just, there wasn't words for it. It just, for him, he just says, I have an energy. This is my energy. And and that was the words at the time. So just, that I love to do. And even now, like my film showed at a few LGBTQ events, and I'm always amazed when I see like everybody's now queer. And I think it's right. It's like, nobody says they're gay or straight anymore. Everybody's queer. And I think that's more honest, because we're all kind of like, we like what we like, and maybe it'll change if I meet the right guy. Maybe suddenly I'll find myself with a guy.
Right.
Never been, but not saying no, they're pretty, whatever, it's like, but not being so stuck in all those kind of things. So I like this kind of queer thing about just being kind of, I'm just going to be who I am when I am with who I am and see how it goes. So I think he was kind of the grandfather of that to some extent.
How can people watch the documentary? How can they find it?
Touchkink.com. We'll take you to Kinema. It'll be on Apple and Amazon shortly as well. I prefer Kinema because they're an indie film platform that frankly pays me more money than most.
Kinema.
Right.
Never heard.
Very expensive to vend. Yeah.
How do you spell that?
Kinema, Kinema. But if you go to touchkink.com, there's links to it.
Okay.
Great.
There's a lot. I was shocked. I got my, sadly, refusal letter from Sundance about 6 months ago. And I was shocked to find out 14,000 films were submitted to Sundance last year.
Wow.
14,000, of which 25 were shown.
Wow.
I'm like, 14,000 films got made? I feel like it seems like a lot of work. And of those 25 films, you know how many actually made money last year?
Oh, how many? 5?
Zero.
Oh my God, 0?
None of them.
Wow, that's sad.
Now, the new thing is like, and this is what I'm doing with my next projects, is you got to build your audience as you're going. I mean, I made some money because I collected email addresses from the beginning.
Yeah.
And the day it was released, I sent 20,000 people, here it comes. And,
Yes.
Yeah.
and a lot of people paid $20 to see it the day that I released it. And if it
Right.
wasn't for that, I would probably be in bankruptcy. And I still might actually for bankruptcy.
So all you listening out there, pay for the documentary. Give them $20.
Yeah.
Give
No.
it $20. But Kinema is very like, and this is the new way. If you're an independent filmmaker, you need to be building, people spend more money. There's more money spent on promoting Hollywood films than there is in making them. So unless you're ready to spend
true.
$100 million on promoting it, you better, so you've got to if you can put a bunch of money aside for promoting it, you need to make sure your audience, and if you can't build an audience, if you can't get 20,000 people to say that they want to see your film, when it's done, it's signed up for a newsletter or signed up for please let me know when your film's available, don't make the film.
Yeah. Right.
How'd you get into
Inappropriate.
filmmaking to begin with?
It's funny. I started very early. I'm telling you, really find out how old I am. I worked on the X-Files and Jump Street and all that.
Cool.
Yeah, I owned a production company that we did film. Here's this thing, film. It's like actual
Real film?
film.
Yeah.
I had a lab. I had a film lab. So yeah, it was just 14 years old. I got a job as a photographer. I loved the camera, then just natural evolution to film. I'm essentially I know you'll be shocked, but I'm essentially a pretty shy guy. The camera was always my,
Buffer.
I'm here.
Yeah.
I can speak to you now.
Yeah.
Oh, I can talk to you because it's not just me. I'm the camera here. And I guess I needed that. I still to this day, if I'm talking to somebody without a camera, I feel a little bit more shy. But with a camera, it's like, oh, I'm supposed to be here. So tell me what you had for breakfast yesterday. What was your last sexual experience? I feel like a different person. So the camera was always my passport to the world. So yeah, 18, 19, I ended up getting into post-production in Vancouver. Luckily, the film industry became a big thing, and we had Jump Street and X-Files, and I'm very lucky, actually.
Cool.
The die was cast. I mainly worked in behind the scenes, production. I always wanted to be a director, but I would say you'd never be crazy enough to be. There's no money in being the architect, but the guy that built the building always gets paid. The architect can get paid, but more often than not, architects don't get paid. But the guy that did the plumbing always got paid. I did the plumbing.
In closing, one of the things that I really loved about your film was the credits and how you gave us a peek into the people's lives who were featured on the film and where they are today and what ended up happening, right? Like there was a little snippet on many of the leads. And I was really sad and really stunned to hear about January's suicide.
Yeah.
It really struck a chord. I thought it was so tasteful, the tribute and the way that you honored her in her life. And I just wanted to thank you for that. I thought it was a really beautiful and kind of startling end to the film.
I didn't want to make it about that.
Yeah. And
she
you felt
wanted to
that.
make
You
the right
felt
thing.
that at the end, that what we were celebrating by watching that film was her life. And there was honesty at the end by sharing what happened tastefully. And that was like a tribute to her. And I really appreciated that the film wasn't about that.
Yeah, no, yeah. Probably would have made a lot more money if I'd made it about that, but no, I was never going to do that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, what a pleasure. What an honor. Great to hear the inside scoop of it all.
Yeah.
Touchkink.com. Check it out.
Yes.
Buy a
Check it
ticket.
out.
Yes. Buy a ticket.
Hey, folks, that is not all. Please stay tuned
For the
because
dish.
Willow and I will always dish it up.
Cool. I was going to say namaste.
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 Now must go.
Namaste. Now must go.
That's right. Toodaloo.
Thank you,
Ciao.
Max.
Thank you very much.
Now, our favorite part, the dish.
Documentaries on kink. Bring them on. Let's share it with the world. I loved just chatting with Max. I love how he's so like humble. He's like, I'm just a normal guy. I said that a few times. It was cute.
Yeah.
And just what he kind of, brought all his expertise and his life's work to showcase the possibilities in sexuality.
Yeah, he didn't get into too much of it, but I wondered what his relationship with January was. It sounds like she was sort of his initiation into exploring this. Would have been fun to hear more about that, but I also wasn't sure if it was okay to ask.
You didn't
those
want to
personal
poke about his personal sex
I
life.
guess so. I guess normally I don't have a problem with that.
I know.
But you
What
can
happened?
kind of feel when people maybe, I
Yeah.
guess there's certain questions that I ask that if people give me something in those, it will lead me to ask more personal questions. And I didn't feel like I was always getting like as much.
An opening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's what I was responding to. One of the takeaways for me that I really liked was this message of like these identifications that people, I think, get really stuck on. And I almost feel like it's an ego identity. It's like a way to make ourselves special, as if we can claim a label.
Yeah,
is
like
ours.
I'm a pro dom, or I'm a this, or I'm a that.
Yeah, or I'm this gender or that gender. Or I'm this is my sexuality and this isn't my sexuality. I can see why maybe it's important, for being able to figure oneself out.
Yeah, it
and
could
to
be
able
important
to-
for like bringing a certain level of confidence forward inside of
Right.
yourself. But then you can evolve beyond that and just be like, I'm just here. This is what I'm into in this moment. Yeah, it was really great the way he broke that down. Like people
Yeah.
are just people. They like what they
Yeah,
like in the
we
moment.
like what we like
Yeah.
when we like it.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, permission to change our minds. Or
Totally.
to change our feelings or
Yeah.
to change our truth, like it's not permanent. And I think it evolves as we get older.
Yeah.
We mature. The things that I identified myself with in my 20s are completely different than how I look at them in my 40s.
Hallelujah. Thank God. I mean,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
shouldn't be thinking the same thing we were thinking in our
Yeah.
teens as we are later, in life.
Yeah, so I guess it's just like a message of don't take yourself so seriously.
Yeah.
You're
Seriously.
likely gonna shift and change.
Yeah.
And including like don't always take sex so seriously. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
choose to be curious and lighthearted. And when you notice a judgment, we've said it so many times on the show, we'll continue to say it. Like be curious about that
curious.
judgment.
Yeah.
Get a little deeper with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And Sex Reimagined that's our brand and our name, and we're on a mission to help people reimagine what is possible inside of the sector of sexuality and life. It's not always what we grow up learning. And so I feel like this documentary is really a beautiful opportunity for all of us to just open our minds and our imagination to what else could be on the plate, even if we don't act it out. Leah's said this a 1,000 times on the podcast. Like, you can have a desire, you can have a scene or a scenario in your head, and you can share it verbally. You can go that far and just express it. And that's going to turn the arousal scale way up, but you don't have to act it out. Even though it's a desire, your mind gets turned on by it, doesn't mean you ever have to play it out in life. Maybe, you are a little bit curious about, gosh, what would that be like to be led around on a collar in public? Like, there's a little curiosity there, but does it mean that you have to do it? No.
One of the things, how like sometimes you drive by an accident and you don't want to look, but you can't help but look, It's kind of like me and how much I like true crime, like I love hearing about serial killers, it's like, give other people nightmares, but it fascinates me. It's like, again, it's one of those examples of like, you don't want to look, but you want to look. The documentary was a little bit like that sometimes for me.
Was it?
Yeah, it was really interesting. So he went to a conference, and one thing that's really cool about sort of these conferences is people dress up. So again, it kind of brings like this creative high theater thing to it all again. And like, it was so like, I didn't know how to relate to this one scene, which I also thought was so interesting. It makes me want to like meet people who have a lot of get off in this, because I don't quite understand it yet. It's like,
What was
so
the scene?
It was a bunch of people pretending to be ponies.
Oh.
And they were like trotting, right? They were on their two legs and they were trotting, and they had these like little hooves on some of them had like hooves on their palms.
Their hands. Yeah.
So they had, and you can't, for those of you who aren't watching but are listening, I'm kind of acting
a pony.
Yeah, and they were all
galloping
hooked to
along
each other, so they were galloping in a circle.
Oh.
And their doms were had their crops and was, spanking
Whipping
them to
them,
keep going.
Yeah.
And if you've ever read the Beauty and the Beast series by Anne Rice, it's like all kinky BDSM. At first, I've read all of her books. And then I got to the Beauty and the Beast series, and I couldn't go any further than like the first 5 chapters. I set it down for like 4 years, and I recently read it because now I've like built my
you've built your capacity.
Yeah, I built my threshold, and it was really interesting because she had a whole stable, and it started to make me go, oh, here's the bridge. So I'd watch the documentary, and I watched the scene with everyone pretending to be ponies and going, like, right. Like some of them have like butt plugs with the horsetail and everything, and the whole 9 yards. They're all dressed up. I'm like, I don't understand the get off in this. But then I read the Anne Rice book.
Okay.
And she's talking about from the submissive and the dom and what these ponies are doing and how they're actually drawing a carriage. And it really then I was like, oh.
I don't get it. I'm not with you.
I don't even know that I can explain it to you.
I'm not with you.
Oh my God. Like there's a whole world
It clicked
out
for
there.
you. Yeah.
It clicked. It helped me understand the why, even though I can't like tell you the why.
Articulate
you have to
it.
read it. You have to watch other people. You have to observe it. This is what I think is so interesting, is that this thing that makes us go, like I don't get it. And then you are exposed, or you have a conversation, or you read something, and you're able to get into the heart and the mind of someone who does understand it and who has some get off in it. And even though I didn't have get off on it, once I read Anne Rice's words, it built a bridge. And I just want to, I guess what my point in saying to all of this is, help us build bridges, people.
Okay.
Okay.
Read some Anne Rice and watch Touch Kink, yo.
And watch Touch Kink, and then let us know your thoughts. Have a beautiful day.
Thanks for tuning in. This episode was hosted by Tantric Sex Master Coach and Positive Psychology Facilitator Leah Piper, as well as by Chinese and Functional Medicine Doctor and Taoist Sexology Teacher Dr. Willow Brown. Don't forget, your comments, likes, subscribes, and suggestions matter. Let's realize this new world together.
It's time for us to get love right, folks. And so we invite you to check out the King and Queen of Hearts.
This is an incredible training for couples who are struggling in unsatisfying sex lives.
It's also for lifelong learners, people whose relationship is great and they want to make it even better.
In this 3-part training that is filled with 8 different tutorials, like the art of tantric kissing, eye gazing that is deep and intimate, connective, and not creepy, and sacred sexual meditations, you do them with your lover to juice you up before sex. Communication tips and really, really valuable relationship essentials are all found in this training.
You know, a common mistake couples make is they wait, they put it off, they avoid, they resist. And if you want to continue doing that, well, good luck. But if you really want to make a change, get this today. Don't let another month go by where you're losing precious connection with your partner.
Plus, you can't beat the price on this program. One of our clients, Casey, said a spark in their intimacy is back on track.
Now, Sarah and her husband, you know what she told us, Willow? She said, finally, he learned how to kiss her right.
Oh my God, hallelujah. So happy for Sarah.
So if you want some radical changes in your love life, go to sexreimagined.com, click on courses, and scroll until you find the King and Queen of Hearts. And because you are a fan of the podcast, you can use the King and Queen 10 code in order to get 10% off. That is King and Queen 10, and you can use it in the checkout.